Here's the question. What's going on inside the minds of top achievers that cause them to make extraordinary breakthroughs both personally and professionally? My name is Tim Shurr, and I invite you to join me as we take a deep dive into the unconscious mind and discover how to transform your biggest dreams into a reality. Welcome to the How to Be Mesmerizing podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to How to Be Mesmerizing. It's Tim Shurr, and I have a special treat for you today. My buddy Heath Armstrong is with us. Heath, welcome to the show.
Thanks. You had me laughing just from even before you started the recording. So that's why I'm smiling so big in case anyone's wondering.
Yes. Well, I love having you on here, and it's so fun because you are like one of the coolest people I've ever met. And I've met a lot of people. You just have such really amazing experiences. And so I just want to read this. It's in your media kit. I don't usually do this, but I'm going to for you because I just love it so much. Now, of course, you're an amazing entrepreneur. You've had the breakdowns and the breakthroughs. You've been able to do, really extraordinary things. But the stuff that I love most is that you are this nomad. You are a Renaissance man. You're out in the world having these amazing experiences. So it says, you've been in 20 different countries. You've summited the world's largest freestanding volcano. You survived rafting in the Nile River. You've witnessed exorcisms in Indonesia and fallen in love with the culture and experience of East African digital education for children. That in itself, I mean, you had me at volcano, right? So, and then the last time we talked, you were talking about what you have learned from studying with, medicine men, right? And in Mexico. And I'm like, this is just amazing. So I wanted to have you on so you could share some of these experiences with everybody. So where do you want to start?
Well, it's like a pin drop with how many angles to move into it. I think what's hitting me intuitively right now is I wasn't always that way. Right? I grew up and I'd never traveled anywhere and I'd never done anything really out of the norm. I mean, I think when we're born into the world, we have all these layers that are stacked upon us and they teach us how to be, and they take that like magical, intuitive child that we become when we come through the portal of our mother or wherever. And all these layers get stacked upon us. And then over the next 20 years or whatever, you're sort of becoming a part of that layer system, like from ads or billboards or politics or religions and parents and tradition, just in all sorts of sentences. So I was becoming that, and I thought I was doing everything that was going to make me happy, and it really didn't turn out to be that way. And I remember in 2009, I had been going to school studying concrete construction, which would lead me to like my first industry job at $13 an hour working in this concrete factory that created these receptacles that carry human feces underground. And I'm like, I don't know, there's nothing wrong with that type of work, right? But it never felt like it was for me. And I got on this plane right before I got that job to go to Houston to do a job interview for like working on an oil rigger out in the Gulf. And this guy gets on the plane, and I was just judging him because that's what these layers had taught me to do, to like compare myself to other people and to judge them. And now I know that that's madness, because the only comparison that is fair to you or anyone in the world is the comparison of you to yourself yesterday and never to anyone else today. And so I see this guy get on the plane, and he's covered in all these tattoos and brands, and he's got this like huge beard, just looks so far out from anything that I was used to being around in like the, middle-class suburban area outside of like Knoxville, Tennessee or Nashville. Mm-hmm. And I just, because of my insecurities and my inconfidence in myself, I start judging and placing judgments on this guy. And I'm like, oh God, don't sit next to me. Don't sit in this seat. And he comes up and he's like, can I get in that seat, brother? And I'm like, oh no, like he just felt intense to me. Yeah. And he made me feel so uncomfortable. And he sat down next to me, and he started asking me what I was doing, and I told him I was going to interview for this job. And he interrupted me just in the middle of it and was like, that's all great, but do you love it? And I was like, what? Do I love it? Like, what kind of a question is that? Because no one had really ever asked me that about anything I was doing in my life. He's like, do you love it? And I was like, I don't know. Of course I don't love it, man. And he's like, well, then why would you spend this precious life doing that? And wow. I was like, well, what,
Wow.
who are you? Like, why would you ask me such insulting question or whatever? And then I became very curious. He didn't say much to me as far as like what he had been doing, but I started asking him questions, and he was actually on that plane flying from Nashville to Houston to reunite with his wife because he had been he was being extradited by NATO from Rwanda because he had been imprisoned for 4 months out there for fighting for gender equality. And when he was young, like I think around the age of 18 or so, he left and went to Africa with this like intuitive mission that he wanted to get away from. He grew up in the Tennessee area, and he wanted to do something that was very activism type role. And he was out there for many years, and he was like working like with being protected by the Rastafarans and all this stuff. And he basically showed me pictures on his phone of these black mamas with their heads chopped off that were in his huts and things like that. And it completely blindsided my perspective on what life and adventure really could be. And I thought in that moment for the first time, like, whoa, I really haven't explored or done anything. And compared to this person who seems to have come from the same environment and type of like childhood that I did, but look at how amazing and fearless he is. And he had these necklaces that were beaded that the women had made, and then he would come back and sell them and raise money to like, do things like run water or whatever out there. And it was all amazing. So I tried to support that, but then he sent me a book in the mail a couple of weeks later, and it was called No More Mondays. And it was by Dan Miller, who ended up being his father. And Dan Miller is a huge author in the self-help world as well. He runs a podcast called 40 Days to the Work You Love, I believe. And it just changed my perspective. Like, no more Mondays. Like, wait, I don't have to go to work Monday through Friday. And of course, long story short, I never understood what that seed planted into me until several years later. What happened was I started knowing that there was something better, and I didn't know how to get there. And so I turned heavy to alcohol, to drugs, to numbing myself. And I think there's something really, and I'm not ashamed of it, like there's something really interesting about when you find yourself in a position that you have a job that doesn't make you happy, so you can make money that you don't necessarily need to buy things that you definitely don't need to impress people that you don't even like, and you're addicted to a bunch of things to numb the sense that you're not doing what you came to this earth to do. And then starting to realize that it wasn't just me, there's so many people that are in this trap. And so at that point, I had a moment where I woke up face down in my garage with my pants down and a bloody nose, like that had come all over the stairs that were leading up into the garage door that went into my house. My dogs were staring at me. I had no recollection of like the last 36 hours, and my car was running in the front yard. Like, it was in my front yard. First of all, it's crazy, but it was running, like the engine was running, and I could smell gas fumes everywhere. And this was in a residential neighborhood. Like, this is supposed to be adults like that have their things together. And it was the first time. I mean, it was just like that. If I do not figure out what that seed was and this feeling, because every time I had a conflict, I thought about him and that plane ride. Like, if I don't understand how to pursue and act on this uncomfortableness I have with my lifestyle and who I am, I'm going to die. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I started trusting and paying more attention. And that's kind of how things started to unfold into my more nomadic entrepreneurial lifestyle.
Wow. That was amazing. Wow.
Yeah, it was intense.
Yeah.
Experience.
There's been so many times where my mind said, oh, I'm not going to like this person. I'm not going to like that person. And I had to say, quiet, just stay open. And then I ended up connecting with them, and they became one of my favorite people. If we can clear our judgment and we can get rid of that part of us it really comes from fear. Right. And so if we can get rid of that part of us or move it to the side and stay open, it's amazing what can happen. So you're jumping from job to job, trying to figure out who you are, getting caught up in how do we numb ourselves and distract ourselves because we feel like we should be living more or being more or having a different life experience, and we're not. And it's depressing. We don't know how to get there. So many people feel that way, dreading Mondays, which is why people have heart attacks more on Monday morning at 8 a.m. than any other time during the day or week. And so then what was your next move? What caused you to decide that you were going to just start, traveling around, or was there some other piece that happened before that?
Yeah, there are a few pieces. And just to remark on the people that you might judge that become good friends, the dude's name that came on the plane is Jared Angaza, and he is one of my best friends today. And I talk to him every day, and he's doing incredible things to take people into space. So he's a wonderful person. Anyone can look him up. But I had another 3 years of really hard battles after that, after waking up. And it was very depressing. It was very suicidal. It was really hard looking, going to work, and I was advancing a little bit in like my career, but like watching everyone cover up giant fields and acreages with concrete was like the absolute worst thing for my health too, because all I care about and all I knew for sure was that nature made me feel better. And I realized, like, am I on the wrong side here? Like, what am I doing? I mean, I think there's much benefit to construction and building things and applications, but it wasn't for me. And I had another really bad incident where I woke up and I couldn't recollect things. And it was the last string for me. It was 2014. I think it was February 13th, 2014. And for the first time, like, I pulled myself down to this oversized jacuzzi tub that I had in my 4-bedroom house with 5 TVs and this bar that I had built and all these fish tanks that I had to try to keep myself sane, because I'll just watch the fish. Like, this is the only sanity I have. And I remember for the first time seeing that Apple had forced the podcasting app onto the phones, and I opened it for the first time. I really didn't even know what a podcast was. And I just listened to this one interview of this amazing woman named Amber Ludwig, her name's now Amber Vilhauer. And she was talking about her story, which the whole beginning of it sounded exactly like my story. And I felt this relation. And then I heard like what she had turned that into. And there was something about her voice that felt so angelic and calming to me. And I'm a super introvert. It's really hard for me to talk to people and reach out to people and, talking to girls or strangers or whatever. I'm just like, I'm very reserved, and I'm most likely not going to do it. And so one of the most important things for me in my journey has been to do that the most, right? To lean into that fear. Yeah. And that was the first time that I got enough courage, because I knew I was going to die if I didn't, to just reach out to this woman. I sent her a message on Facebook. I found her on Facebook, and I didn't think she was going to reply, but she replied immediately. And I just said, like, hey, I listened to this interview. I just wanted to say thanks. It's very inspiring to hear someone like make a transformation. I hope I can do it too. I actually have a screenshot of this because I've been working on a book, and I've been kind of going through my past. And she replied immediately, and she's like, hey, can I call you? And I was like, wait, what? This woman who's got her things together. She's running this incredible organization and all this stuff. Like, why would she want to call me? But wow. She called me, and she completely dissembled all of those fears and thoughts that I had in my head, and told me every time I was starting to make an excuse, she called me out. And she was like, listen to me, like, you have every bit of grit that it takes to do exactly what I'm doing and more in your own way. And you can do it. And all you have to do is decide that you're going to do it, and make sure that you don't decide anything else, but you put all of your focus into this direction. And she introduced me to 2 people. One of them was a guy named Paul Kemp, who was a podcaster. And another one was Hal Elrod, the Miracle Morning series, right? He's an international best-selling author of all these Miracle Morning series. And I had a call with him, and I implemented this like morning routine that I had never had into my life. And that changed everything for me, just bringing in, meditation and journaling and exercise and all these things first thing in the morning. And then Paul was like, hey, I kind of like the way your voice sounds. I think you would be really good at podcasting. Maybe I'll teach you how to podcast. They didn't have to do any of that for me. It's not like I was paying them. It was like, why are these people being so nice to me? What did I do? Because the imposter syndrome is so real for anyone who's trying to make a transformation, right? Yes. And I just said yes. And he basically encouraged me to figure out what I wanted in life. And I was like, well, I would love to travel the world and explore new cultures and things, and like the hero's journey, right? Like I read The Alchemist, and it's like, I want to do that. I want to create things. I want to write. I want to talk to new people. And you don't even really know how much stuff you want to do in those moments until it starts unfolding like a flower. And he's like, okay, well then what you have to do is you have to find the people that are doing that. And then you have to ask them how they're doing it and then do it yourself. And I was like, wow, you made that sound so simple, because it was really an impossible question of how for me. So that's what I did. He helped me set up a podcast. It was called the Artsy Now Show. And I just started interviewing creative entrepreneurs and asking them how they were doing the things that they were doing. And the second episode was a Hollywood director who won the New York International Film Festival. And he had come over from Iran. And he told me one thing. He said, just remember that every day is a bonus round, and slow down and enjoy something beautiful. And after I asked him to be on the show and he said yes, at that point I was like, well, there's no turning back now, because he's big. Like, this is crazy. I can't just turn back now. If I turn back now, I'm never going to go forward. I know I will never come back from this. And so I started going. And as I interviewed in all these amazing people, some in person, most via podcast. And I started noticing all the overlapping similar things that they were doing with habits and health and mindset. And I started to put them into a system that made sense for myself, and using it and creating these different systems to track myself and my habits and my happiness, and celebrating my wins and giving gifts every day, and seeing how that affected my health. And, I was able to get sober, and I was able to start to have this aspiring action. And I started going to the local entrepreneur center in Lexington, Kentucky, and talking with people who were doing things on their own. And it changed everything for me. And I never understood in those moments, like, why all the magic was appearing, but I started trusting, and I was able to recount that I had gone through 17 different jobs. And I tried to start 3 different businesses that failed before I actually got one to work. But as I started getting that first one to work, it went really quick. And I was able to quit my job, and I sold everything that I had, and I moved across the country to start traveling around, and I started going out of the country a little bit, and it just started getting really surreal really quick. And yeah, that's how that kind of next leg unfolded for me.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, that's really amazing. So, it's recognizing that, there's going to be a lot of setbacks. There's going to be a lot of things that don't work out, but you just keep taking that step forward anyway. And I find that that's the only really secret sauce that there is that people just keep moving forward anyway. It's no matter how many times you get knocked down, you just find a way to get up and keep moving towards it. And then going into the places that make you feel most uncomfortable. That's where your biggest breakthroughs are always hidden. And you just keep going to those places, and then new doors open, new opportunities, new relationships, and then it unfolds. And you don't have to know how to figure it out. You just keep doing the next step that's in front of you. So I mean, it's amazing. So now you've traveled around and you've been able to create a successful business. You've done a lot of amazing stuff. You created these sweet ass affirmations, motivation for the creative maniac mind. I love these cards. When you sent them to me, I got them out, and I had everybody in my family pick a card, and we were reading them, and it was hilarious because they felt, like it was, oh, this one's me.
Yeah, and find you.
Yeah, I loved them. They're so good. So I recommend getting, a box of these sweet affirmations cards, because they're really, really well done and beautiful and amazing. So we'll have the show notes for that. I want to bring up something because I thought it was so powerful. I mean, you have amazing stories, but you were telling me about one time where you were talking to, and I don't know if it's the right word or not, but a medicine man or a tribal leader, or what the correct language or terminology is. But you gave the metaphor of you don't pray for rain, you pray rain. Remember that?
Yeah.
Could you share that story real quick for me, please?
Well, my discovery of coming into, it was really last year in the midst of this pandemic, of trying to understand who I was, and actually that business that I had created, I ended up losing all of it. And I had to go through this whole transformative process of rebirth again, and figure out who I was and what really mattered. And that comes down to a lot of these like little magical messages that are in those cards, or the journaling systems that I create and stuff like that. And I ended up, per intuitive chance, with this incredible Mayan Oracle. His name's Todd Eric. And he is, just being around him is it's something that like reminds you of how much you actually are the sun, you are the moon, you are the trees. And he always says, crystallize what you want your world to be. And it's so true. Like when you talk about when you have to make a decision, I've heard you say stuff like you have to put meaning to it, right? It doesn't matter what happens. You have to identify what the meaning is to what happened there. And I always think like, yeah, life isn't about what happens to you. It's not about the beauty that happens, and it's not about the BS that happens. It's about how you choose to react when it happens. And you can allow fear and resistance to sort of suffocate you, and it can cripple you and keep you down, or you can use those experiences as fuel to rage forward and build the life that you really want. And like he says, crystallize what you want your world to be. Like, you don't pray for rain, you pray rain. You remove the space between you and the rain and realize that you are it, right? It's all internal. It's all part of your essence and your embodiment. And we are all together in this. And there's so many things that can relate to. It's just like when I contemplate death, I think I try to do it as much as possible, because it's like death is the only constant reminder of how purposeful and beautiful life really is. And if we can remember that we're going to pass and we don't know exactly when it's going to show up, then it reminds us to be intentful and not to pray for rain or something that's going to come in and fix us, but to pray rain, something that is of us, and realizing that we're going to be a part of that, no matter if we're on this side of that death door or on the next side of the death door. And, it sent me into a long explorative journey of spending time on mountains and in bodies of water and practicing with elements and fires and just universal synchronistic type natural stuff. But yeah, I hope that answered your question. It was just, there's a lot of different routes I can go with that for a long time. So,
well, you are certainly a modern day alchemist. I mean, I love how you're talking. I'm going to start calling you Merlin.
That's funny. Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I love that, Heath. I've been using that ever since you shared that with me. I use it all the time. In fact, it surprises me how much I have to use it, because your ego can fool you into thinking that you're so much farther down the road than you may actually be, so I'm like, oh, I've got all this wisdom. And
isn't that true?
Yeah. And then, but my kids have been, reminding me lately and feeding back, oh, Dad, you're playing small, or you're so worried that things aren't going to work out. And I'm like, what, me? I'm the motivation guy, and
calling you out.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought I was over it, but apparently, I'm revisiting it again in a new way, where, after so many disappointing things and having to reinvent ourselves yet again, and having to pivot, that insecurity or that fear can come out of, well, this isn't going to work out either. And don't get too excited. You don't want to be let down. And that really sabotages us. And so in my mind, I say to myself, if somebody's like, you think it's going to work? And I say in myself, pray rain, it's already worked. It's already happened. It's already a part of me. It's already here. If you pray that it's going to work out, it implies that it hasn't. And that's a scarcity mindset. It's like, instead of praying for help from God, you thank God for the help, because it's already being delivered. It's a poverty versus prosperity consciousness. And I think that's something that we all need.
Between you and it.
Yeah. We're separate from, instead of being one with. And, that's a very powerful concept that we've got to keep, working in our lives. Sometimes people say the only reason you don't have what you want is because you haven't believed in it 100%. And if you believe in it 100%, it's here. And I think you had said that, when people pray for rain, if they don't get the rain, it's because they didn't believe in it 100% that it was going to rain. The old metaphor, you can tell who has the real faith in a drought, the farmer who prepares the field and the one who doesn't. I'm preparing the field even in the drought because I believe that the rain is happening. Right. And so I put the work in, I prepare the field, and that's the one who has the real faith.
Yeah. And in the action, that's when you actually make the emotional connection. I mean, that's why affirmations only work if you're emotionally connected to it and you're taking action to have that experience. Like, you can do all the affirming that you want. And of course, the more you affirm, the more you're going to train your brain to believe that it's true. And then therefore you're probably more likely to take action to make it true. But most of the time it's in that action, it's in those baby steps that start to give you the experience of these things showing up and having this vision, and then little pieces of it coming to reality. When you do that, that's when your confidence really comes in, and it's like, oh, I emotionally am connected to this now. Now I feel confident in it. Now I understand that the more action I take, the more I can move through this anxiety and this fear. And once I understood that, once I started having those things happen, there was no going back. It's like finding your voice as a writer. Once you do it, there's always going to be resistance gremlins staring at you in the face. But as long as you can remember that you aren't them and they are different than you, then you can sort of move right through any of the effery or whatever that they're putting, the brick walls that they're putting in front of you, and realizing that your muse is connected to you. You are a creative being. To live, I feel like, is to create. And when you stop creating, when you get yourself in a routine of sitting on a couch with your hands down your pants, watching Jerry Springer with a bucket of fried chicken and eating tubs of ice cream, when you get yourself in those routines and you're not creating, then you've already died. It's already misery. But you can have a rebirth and you can discover what life is again. And that all comes down to affirming what you want and then actually taking action to feel what it's like, to get a little experience with what you want, and then taking the rest of the steps from there. And it's like, you can't always see what's right in front of you, but if you have a vision, you can see the end route. It's like driving a car in dense fog, essentially, right? You know that you're trying to get to the store, but you can't see 10 feet in front of your vehicle. But if you keep focusing on what's right in front of you and you have this vision of where you're going and you make sure they're in alignment with each other, you're going to get there. And it's not as complicated as we make it think. And I was talking to my friend Olivia the other day, and she said, yeah, she's a shaman. She's just the most brilliant, loving people I've ever met. She said, yeah, when did simple get so complicated, man? And I was just like, oh, you're right. When did simple get so hard? Right? Why did we in this world? It feels like we've just overcomplicated everything. It's really not that hard. Like, the most beautiful thing is to pray rain, to sit around a fire and look at everyone that you know in the eyes and say, hey, I love you. And look at these stars above us and look at this fire that's warming us and allowing us to cook and have this amazing meal and this sip of water. And how far did this water travel to get into our body? How many millions of years was it sitting somewhere and creating nutrients? And it's just, when you start paying awareness to all of these things, it's magic really is in you. It's all around you, and it's always going to be supporting you. And it's just so important to remember that.
Boom, there it is. I love that. So Heath Armstrong, where can people find your affirmation cards, your journals? Where can they learn more about your what you do?
Yeah, heatharmstrong.com. I've got a new website coming up, which is going to be exciting. It makes it much more simple to find the things that I do. And then ragecreate.com would be where the affirmation cards are. They're also on Amazon. And yeah, I've got a second deck coming out soon. We're going to be launching a Kickstarter for it, which is exciting. Yes. And then, yeah, I have a podcast called Never Stop Peaking. If anyone's interested in listening to a maniac rant, that's pretty much it for now.
Yes, I love it. All right. Well, we're going to make sure we have those links in the show notes. Heath, it was a pleasure as always. I've got to get you back on the show because I know we've got a lot more to talk about. So, but thanks so much for sharing your wisdom and your insights and your journey with us. And it's been really a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, Tim, thank you so much. And you've always been quite an inspiration to me, and watching and hearing what you do has actually, anyone listening, has really helped me with working through anxiety, especially the look up at the ceiling tip. And as Tot Eric would always say to close things out, Matiosh, which means deep gratitude.
Matiosh.
Matiosh.
All right, everybody. Wow, that was amazing. Heath is one of the most coolest people you'll ever meet on this planet. So make sure you go to ragecreate.com. You check out heatharmstrong.com and get his affirmation cards and check out his journals because they are really amazing. And use the insights that you've learned. Keep things simple. Make your life mesmerizing. We'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody. Hey, it's Tim. You ever wonder why so many talented, hardworking entrepreneurs and business owners struggle with inconsistent self-belief or high stress or procrastination or self-sabotage? Well, the answer may surprise you, and the solution is already inside of you. I've been searching for the answers to this for decades, and I found them, and I put it into a new program called The Power of Your Unconscious Mind, Mental Secrets for Accelerating Success. And because you're a listener, I want to give you a free VIP copy. Head over to PowerMindsetProgram.com. That's PowerMindsetProgram.com and grab your copy today.